Hey y'all, how's it going? Hope you missed us. We missed you. How you doing today, Taryn?
I'm good. I'm excited to recap another wonderful episode of Disrupt
Delete.
and Reset. So, all right, team. So, this most recent episode, we talked about capacity and what that means to the individual, what it means to the individual, what it means to health. And we really did unpack quite a bit. And so we think we said a lot, but we always think it's easier to have a little cheat sheet and just see like if you agree with our kind of our takeaways from it. What about you, Andrea?
Yeah, I think there was a lot that we said. There's a lot that we could have talked about, but specifically, some of the things that stood out to me was our conversation. I think I mentioned the word pushback, and you countered with the word boundaries. So maybe that's where we start. Start there.
So we talked about a lot about this idea of like protecting one's capacity, and what I really take away from that is simply about creating boundaries. You know, boundaries will allow you to set your capacity. So I'll say that one more time. Boundaries will allow you to set your capacity. Too often we allow boundaries to be made in pencil and they get easily erased and moved. We always talk about the term the goalpost is always moving. But at some point when the goalpost is always moving, you're exerting a lot more energy. You're taking up a lot more space. You're using a lot more capacity. So by the time you get to what you really need to do, you're full of capacity. So really, when we talk about protecting your capacity, identifying how much capacity you need for one situation over another, for us is really just create your boundaries and really try to stick to your boundaries, and don't let other people make you feel bad about setting boundaries as you go to protect your capacity, whether it's with your family, your friends, in your professional space. It really is about like creating boundaries to protect your capacity. What are your thoughts on that one, Andrea?
Yeah, no, I think I like the idea of having ownership over your time and your whole vibe and your aura, right? So I think you're the one, obviously, that sets the boundaries, right? And you're the one to uphold them. Like that's your responsibility, right? If you allow people to sort of, as Taryn mentioned, erase your boundaries, that's on you. And so that you'll find will essentially eat into your capacity. I think also sometimes the thing that becomes a barrier or a boundary breaker is what has been ingrained in our mind, or what I have called throughout the season legacy behaviors.
Mhm.
So, just to give a definition, legacy behaviors are things that, for example, we've learned growing up or we've learned through society that have somehow just been ingrained in us. It's like set it and forget it, right? We do it because it comes naturally as something that we have always been doing, right? And sometimes we get to different seasons or different places in life where those legacy behaviors no longer create the best situation, or they no longer serve you, right? So when we talk about legacy behaviors, that's what it means. It's things that we've just done or have been instilling us from learning from our parents or the people around us, or even from society. One way that we do it can sometimes impact one, our capacity or our ability to uphold boundaries. So just wanted to define legacy behaviors because I know I say it several times throughout our episodes. But, Taryn, the other thing that comes to mind when I think about capacity is I don't think that we always give ourselves the grace
Mhm.
to be flexible or to evolve, right? So there's a level of flexibility that each human being essentially needs, right? To be able to say, well, today I am going to be a little bit more introverted, for example, because I need to focus on something that's a personal goal. Or I think sometimes our friends and family members expect us to be just a monolith, and human beings are not a monolith. What are your thoughts around that?
I just want to kind of go back to on the legacy part as well as the boundary part. when you mention that, it makes me think about when you say legacy behaviors, it's behaviors we've been taught, which may not be good behavior. And so it goes back to that boundary part of, and top of mind comes for me of like, it is sometimes rewarded or celebrated when someone works 12 hours on something, or someone misses something, but it really shows they care about something else. And that's a boundary being pushed, but it's
Mm-hmm.
celebrated because someone, it's someone celebrated because they worked until 12 o'clock at night, or they're celebrated because they are exhausted, but they did not take the time for themselves. It was like, but they're still a good parent because they still, did all this, even though they are dragging their feet. And so it's this idea of like, when we think about legacy behaviors, it's like sometimes it's like those legacy behaviors are harmful. And when we talk about people not being a monolith, to use that, it's we are all we all work towards something. We're all trying to get some type of income, whether you work for someone, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're a daughter, whether you're a son, whether you're a spouse. It's this idea of like, you're not just one thing, you're not just in this one box. And that's a lot in itself when we talk about capacity, right? Because you are not just 100% one thing. And so what happens when you get burned out in a space, when you get burned out, which leads to a diminishing of capacity, or the diminishing of capacity, shall I say, leads to one getting burned out. And so when I hear about you talk about this monolith idea and being one person or trying to be multiple people, I feel like when you begin to not pay attention to the boundaries that you've created for yourself, and you begin to diminish in capacity in different spaces, that's when I feel like this lack of accountability sometimes pops up. It's like, okay, I'm so burnt out at work that I cannot be a good friend. But versus me saying that, or not even saying that, but before even getting to that space, now I'm just not going to show up for the friend that, as I promised I would be.
Yeah, that definitely is true, because we know that capacity or having lack of capacity doesn't mean that we should not be accountable, right? For being good human beings, right? At its core,
Mhm.
right? So accountability matters. I love when you said, obviously, human beings are not a monolith. But I do think on the flip side, right? Lack of capacity can appear to be inconsistency. And
Mm.
that, I don't feel like that's fair. Like, when we start to think about, like, yes, I do agree with you 100%. Like, accountability matters. Just because you have less capacity or more capacity, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be held accountable to being a good friend, being a good partner, doing the things that you can do, being a good human being, and having a good attitude. I think oftentimes accountability, or adults like to say that, well, this is how I feel, and then they give you a nasty attitude, right? No, you still need to be accountable to treat people right. But also, that makes me think of being self-aware. Most
Hmm.
of us are not self-aware, right? I think self-awareness is such an underrated skill that people don't necessarily value as much, right? And I do think there's a difference between being self-aware and then also being aware. So if you think about it, obviously self-aware is looking at yourself and your actions and how you respond to other people and things and situations, right? But then if you step out of that and you look at the situations at hand, okay, it's like, all right, then what else is going on with Taryn, right? Beyond my self-awareness, what's going on with Taryn or the person across the room? And thinking through just how to navigate those situations to minimize conflict, I think is super important. The closest thing to, I guess, self-awareness and awareness is that ability of being able to walk into the room, know who you are, where you are in the space, but also being able to read the room.
Talked about in the episode an example that I gave, which you have to go watch the episode to find out the example. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
continue.
No apologies. Reading the room is really important. Self-awareness and awareness, two underrated skills that I don't think people use, enough, as much as they should, and also identify the difference between the two.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. So as we talk about the idea of capacity, which you are encouraged, if you're watching this video right now, to go and watch or rewatch the Capacity podcast. Is this idea for me, what I'm taking away from our conversation, and I would love to, in the chat comments, let us know what you think. It's one, in order to create capacity for yourself as a being, or even support others in creating capacity for themselves or protecting their capacity, I hear it's boundaries. So creating very clear boundaries that you are comfortable with, that you have set, that you have influence in sticking by them in order to fulfill yourself. But also, if you're at a space where maybe you've hit your capacity, or whether you hit your capacity, it also is not an excuse for not being accountable. And you almost shouldn't get to the point of a lack of accountability because you've hit your capacity. If you're there, you have that self-awareness of yourself, but also that awareness of others who may be hitting theirs. Would you say that's kind of what we talked about in general?
Yeah, absolutely. The only thing I would add is take a look at your legacy behaviors. So those things that are socially acceptable, things that are acceptable in your family, are those behaviors actually beneficial to the world that we're in now, to the person that you are right now? So audit your legacy behaviors and determine if there needs to be some adjustment there. Additionally, self-awareness and awareness, they both matter, right? And sometimes we need to activate more self-awareness in certain situations, but sometimes we need to also activate awareness so that we're really aware of, well, I'm using the word aware again,
Aware.
You got to be aware of what's going on and just be a little bit more responsible and accountable for your behaviors and how you navigate certain situations. But yeah, definitely check out the episode, Mental Gymnastics. Do you have capacity for that?
Yep, and you can find us not only here on YouTube or IG, but also please go listen on Spotify, iHeartRadio, as well as Amazon Music. So for now, thank you. Continue to be disrupted or not. Just definitely delete things that don't serve you and reset.
Take care.
Bye, all.